In ancient times, the country of Arche was filled with powerful magicians. One day, humanity lost this blessing, and the state, which was the strongest, turned into a small kingdom. The country began to look for other ways to survive, for example, like a marriage of convenience. Second Prince Xander Ketteril burst into the room and shouted that this could not be true. It's not too late for his sister to reconsider her decision. His elder brother and first prince, Dietrich Ketteril, asked him to be quiet as this is a secret conversation. The young man did not cease to be indignant that this simply did not fit in his head. How can you force your own sister to marry Cana? Rhyadan. The brother actually heard what rumors were circulating about him in the kingdom. This guy is crazy and kills people for fun. Locals gossip that their country signed peace, selling the princess in the process. Ezebia said, "Stop being nervous. She wants this marriage, not her older brother." The girl made this decision on her own, so there is no need to make a fuss. The youngest must promise her that he will look after his father, and also remain a good boy and listen to Dietrich in everything. The young man thanked his sister for such a sacrifice, and said that the entire population of Arche owes her life. Our heroine always knew that for an aristocrat to marry for love is a very rare case. This agreement is the only opportunity to protect her home country from imminent danger, so she had no choice but to try to help her. After some time, the wedding ceremony had already arrived, and the priest asked if she agreed to take Cana as her husband, Rhyadan. The girl quietly replied that she agreed. She thought to herself that the man standing in front of her was the emperor. The abbot declared them husband and wife and said that their union must be sealed with an oath. After that, the young man told her to close her eyes and kissed her deeply. The girl thought to herself that they had committed a vow kiss, so now there was no turning back. Starting today, this young man is her legal husband. After a short period of time, our heroine was already sitting in the carriage, and her husband shouted that everyone needed to line up in order to hit the road. Ezebia thought that even the wedding was in a hurry. Although, given all the circumstances, this is understandable. His kingdom is completely new, and the emperor cannot leave it for long. Although everyone around him insisted that he was a real monster, up close the guy looked like God. The young man was respected by everyone around him, not like the inexperienced she. The Kataril clan received the blessing of the guardian of the Silver Forest. In each generation, one magician must awaken, who is destined to reveal the secret that lurks underground and protect the country. In this generation, she became a magician, but she managed to discover only a small part of the magical powers in herself. It was very interesting whether our heroine could cope with the title of Empress. Most likely, when the young man gets tired of her, he will simply throw her out into the street. While the girl was thinking about all this, she saw someone hiding among the trees. Literally a moment later, a magic arrow flew at the girl. There was a commotion on the street. People were shouting what had happened. Were they really being shot at? It is also necessary to check if everything is okay with the Empress. Meanwhile, the arrow hit the girl right in the heart, and she's about to lose consciousness. A little earlier, Ezebia told her brother that she was very scared and did not want to go to the kingdom of Rhyadan or marry Cana. Just the thought of this fills her with horror. Is there really no other way to save their strange one? Dietrich replied that his heart was breaking, that his sister was suffering so much, but how else could they act in this situation? Arche has practically no strength left to resist. Their army is exhausted, there are almost no supplies, and there is simply nowhere to retreat. If they had a magician who was able to protect the state, then everything would be different. But what is not, there is not there, so they must do everything possible to survive. The girl thought to herself that her brother was right. If she had enough strength to protect the country, then she would have been of at least some use, and this would not have happened. Suddenly, our heroine abruptly came to her senses because someone was shouting loudly for the Empress to open her eyes. The girl did not understand what was happening at all, because an arrow had just flown into her. Then she turned back and saw a young man holding her lifeless body in his arms. The young man was angry that it was all his fault. He shouldn't have trusted these dirty northerners. There was no need to agree to these vile games. Now their alliance is destroyed, and Arche will pay for his betrayal with blood. When the guy said that they were immediately going back and starting preparations for war, Ezebia tried to shout to him, but of course he didn't hear anything. Suddenly, our heroine felt very painful. It seemed as if her body was about to be torn into pieces. She couldn't even move. The girl heard the Emperor say that the kingdom of Arche would have to watch its own destruction. Then her older brother appeared near the carriage, who said that his sister was poor and continued to breathe, bleeding. At the sight of him, Ezebia breathed a sigh of relief and noted that she was glad that he had come. Suddenly the killer appeared and asked if he liked the implementation of the plan. His Highness should be pleased. The young man replied that he was not just satisfied, but happy, because he had finally gotten rid of all the hindrances. The guy would like to personally verify that she is really dead. The mercenary replied that there was no need to worry. The arrow hit right in the heart, so death is guaranteed. Our heroine was shocked by the information she heard and simply couldn't believe it. Dietrich said that we should not forget that this is not the end of the contract. He allowed him to deal with his sister only because the guy promised to provide the power that could destroy the Riadan Empire. The killer replied that he could be calm and not worry about it, since the protracted war would end with the victory of Arche, and the name of the young man will be heard by the population throughout the continent. The mercenary then added that it was a pity that the emperor took the body of Ezebia. She was born from a hereditary magician, so even her corpse would be useful. The girl did not understand how her own blood and the closest person could do this to her. Soon a bloody war began between Arche and Riadan. Our heroine remained a ghost who was locked in the forest where she died. It was real hell on earth. She could not find an explanation for the horrors that she was forced to see. Ezebia could only observe everything, since she could no longer change anything. There was no end in sight to the war. After being accused by the Riadan Empire of killing the princess, Dietrich wanted to win by uniting with a small northern state. But the emperor dealt with everything very quickly. Winning victory after victory, he increasingly drove Arche into a state of complete despair. In the face of war, all meaning was lost. The forests and fields of her beautiful state, all the people she loved, disappeared before her eyes. Their cold bodies, showing no signs of life, were like a mockery of her stupid death. After 3 years of war, the elder brother was captured and brought before Emperor Cana. The young man shouted that he had killed his entire family, captured the country, but let him not think that this was a victory. The Ketteril dynasty will curse him forever. The young man grinned and replied that even now he still couldn't calm down. Then he swung his sword and added that the guy could curse him even after his death, so that he would come to his voice and get rid of even his ghost. After which our heroine's elder brother was killed with one blow of the sword. When the servant asked what His Highness would order to do next, the young man replied that, of course, burn everything to the ground. Our heroine mentally asked her brother if this was really what he wanted. How could his plans be more important than her, his younger brother and father? Then, in despair, she began to turn to the Silver Forest, begging to hear her cry and provide help. Let him take her soul, but give Arche another chance. She asks to give her the opportunity to turn back time and fix everything, after which she lost consciousness. When the girl came to her senses, she saw her father and younger brother looking at her in surprise. The boy immediately rushed to hug her, but our heroine did not understand how this was even possible. Ezebia saw with her own eyes their corpses, as well as their pale, lifeless faces. Now they were all alive. Meanwhile, the father talked to the doctor about how the princess had a rough night and whether there should be any side effects from waking up. The doctor replied that everything was fine. The girl changed the color of her eyes and hair, but this is typical of a magician. However, this is the first time this has happened in the last 100 years, so they do not know all the details. Our heroine noted that her abilities appeared when she was 10 years old. Has she really gone back in time? This simply cannot happen. It seems she is going crazy, and this is all a hallucination. Xander told his little sister not to get sick anymore, as they should be together as long as possible. Ezebia touched her younger brother and noted that he was warm, which means he was alive, so she simply burst into tears. Holding the boy tightly to her, The girl thought that the silver forest had finally heard her prayers. Then she mentally thanked him for another chance, which she would never miss. The princess will protect her family and her country, no matter the cost. But for this, our heroine will need a power that will be more powerful than that of any guardian. The patron deity of Arche is the Silver Forest. She was the sister of the goddess Fehar. After death, she was reborn and became a tree at the very edge of the world. This kingdom is bordered by a forest that has grown around this tree. These heroes protected the kingdom from any dangers. After some time, the glory days of this country passed. Suddenly, there were no guardians left in the kingdom, and it was on the verge of destruction. Her awakening became the only hope. Everyone congratulated the princess and rejoiced that they finally had their own protector. Ezebia was considered by everyone to be the real treasure of the country, until it became known that she could not use the net. All the girl could do was talk to trees and flowers. Apparently something went wrong during the awakening. The trees said that she would not have been able to make friends with them if she had not awakened her magic. They were very kind to her, but it still didn't help her cope with people's criticism. In a past life, Ezebia could only watch the destruction of the kingdom, but at the moment, everything was completely different. If the Silver Forest really fulfilled her wish, then in any case, seeing the small sprout that she managed to create with the help of magic, our heroine noted to herself that the forest had... Of course, her magical power is much greater than it was in her previous life. Dietrich entered the room, greeted her, and said that he had heard that she had awakened. They say that after this she experienced terrible pain. What a pity. Our heroine remembered the words that even the corpse of such a magician would be useful, and realized. The girl automatically raised her hand to hit the young man, but stopped in time. Then she asked for forgiveness and said that she simply had not come to her senses yet, and was too sensitive. She hopes that The young man noted that apparently she was really still recovering. When her brother took her hands and worriedly said that sooner or later it would get better, the guy said that he was very sorry that he had to talk about this under such circumstances. The elder brother stated that she has now become the new guardian, but many are outraged and still do not believe in the blessing of the... The guy does not consider this to be fiction, but where did such rumors and doubts come from? The girl was awakened by the guardian, but she cannot cast a single spell. How annoying it is! But a girl does not need to blame herself because of this, and also have high hopes. Ezebia remembered how she ran up to her brother and joyfully talked about how she could... The brother replied that this is not magic, but stupid tricks. The guy inspired her that this was not a blessing, but a curse. It's okay if she can't do anything. Her big brother is nearby and will take care of everything. From all these visions, our heroine got a really bad headache. Dietrich asked if she was okay. Suddenly, a spirit appeared near her, who whispered that she knew that everything would be exactly like this. How was Ezebia? The Silver Forest did not choose her. He just wanted her to go through these... After which she loudly screamed the word, no, and escaped from The older brother did not understand what was happening to her. I thought to myself that first I need to go to the Silver Forest. Even if he did not... After some time, our heroine arrived in the northern forest, which was located on the... There was a strong storm, so the servants shouted that it was... The girl replied that she could not go back yet, since she had not completed her business. Before the trip, she told her father that due to the fact that she had awakened, the man said that the forest does not allow anyone in except King Arche, and even he is only allowed... One day he bowed on his knees, begging her to bring her mother back to life, but the forest did not hear his desperate pleas. After that, he was left alone with his pain and limbs frozen in the cold. Ezebia replied that she promised to return if there was a snowstorm. She is, saying that perhaps the forest itself was calling her. The man handed her the amulet and asked her to take it with her. This heat-preserving pendant was created by dwarves. Her father bought it for her mother and hopes it will help her. The girl noted to herself that it was thanks to this pendant that the body managed to retain heat. Therefore, I mentally thanked our heroine no longer wants to lose people dear to her, so she must change her fate. There is only one way out. She may not have many magical powers, but she remembers how to use them. Ezebia will use her only ability and connect with the trees of this forest. Then she mentally began to address them and say that if anyone heard her, suddenly the weather began to improve. The sun appeared and the snowstorm subsided. Noting that it seemed that the forest heard her, our heroine told the guards to wait for her. Having walked a little further, the girl noted that it was much colder in the wilds, and it chilled right to the bones. After some time, Ezebia heard a voice that said that they had finally met again. Then he asked what brought her. It seemed very familiar to our heroine, and when she heard it, it seemed as if she was returning to the past. What should she do in order to avoid that terrible end that she is so afraid of? The tree replied that it seemed she had misunderstood everything. It watched her all the time, but did not hear her. Our heroine said that she was sure that it was her voice. She thought she was. The goddess told her to go home, since her body was still too young and fragile for such. Ezebia shouted that it didn't matter. She would rather die in this place. Our heroine really wants to defend her country on her own, so let the tree tell her what to do. The deity replied that she left him no other choice. Even though she is a guardian, she has very little magical. Therefore, it is partly to blame for her difficult past, which she had to endure. The goddess will share her life force with her, and perhaps the girl will be able to save the future. Suddenly, a ghostly voice began to sound in her head, saying that the tree, no matter how you look at it, she is still destined for a tragic end. Just like if this is her fate, then so be it. She was tired of constantly being afraid and living in fear. Some time later, one of the guards slapped the second one because he stood there yawning. Behind them, the voice of our heroine, who was already 20 years old, was heard, and she said that on the way, the guard told her that after she blocked the princess replied that she was very glad that she was able to help in this way. The thorny vine perfectly protected the wall, and few people could climb it. The arrows and shields she created have proven effective against various monsters. Then he added that it sounds funny, but sometimes it seems to him as if they were comrades, and remembering everything she saw while she was a ghost, the girl replied that 10 years have passed since she returned to the past. The Silver Forest, but still it was impossible to relax, since even in this life she heard terrible news about Emperor Riadon. They are expanding their borders too quickly and will soon reach her homeland. Under her leadership, the army became stronger, but still, our heroine is not going to give up and will not allow him to destroy the state. Suddenly, a servant ran up to them and said that a letter had arrived from the Empire personally. Ezebia thought to herself that even if she had to marry this man, she would not give up. The guy read a letter from Cana, in which it was written that he had only one requirement. Their princess, the elder brother shouted, "What kind of impudence is this to so shamelessly ask for her hand in marriage?" Our heroine calmly drank tea and thought that these same people absolutely easily got rid of. The only thing that remained unchanged was the emperor's demand. Perhaps his past was even harder than her life. Perhaps this is why he became so cruel. Then she thought that this was absolutely none of her business, and the elder brother said that there is nothing more painful than sending his beloved sister. Our heroine thought to herself that what beautiful words. But a week later, Dietrich walked towards his sister, who asked what he was doing there at such. They won't see each other soon, so let her be more kind to her family. The girl replied that the young man handed her some kind of pendant, and she asked what it was. The guy explained that this is a communication crystal. Thanks to the spell, you can establish, since she will live there, then let her report everything that she can find out about the. Ezebia asked if he really decided to make her a spy. Why is this? Because she thought that. Dietrich replied that this was only in words. This is the perfect way to stall for time. Our heroine exclaimed that if the emperor found out about this, it would be very bad. Does he understand that a war could break out? The brother asked why he could. Could it be that his naive sister still? All that remains is to wait for the moment when the empire relaxes its vigilance. In addition, they have a very strong ally. If you prepare well, killing after everything she heard, the girl realized that her brother got these magical objects for a reason. Such things cannot be created without magical power. Noticing that his sister had been silent for a long time, the young man asked her to. Ezebia thought to herself that if they refused him, he would start a war by killing her. Is there any way to avoid this fate? She thought that Meanwhile, the elder brother asked if she really thought that marriage to the guy couldn't even think that his sister was so stupid. Let her read these secrets. The keeper of RK is destined for a single destiny. Becoming one inevitably comes with the burden of serving the northern forest. Outside the kingdom, the girl will not be able to use her magic, and it will also be impossible to. Our heroine couldn't believe her ears and exclaimed that it was all a lie. Dietrich countered that this was true. Only the king has access to the archive. Just imagine the emperor's disappointment when he learns that the bride he has chosen cannot have children. The young man will be completely furious and will wipe out their state from the face. Pushing him away, our heroine screamed that this was a blatant lie and she didn't want to hear it anymore. The young man said that she should think for herself. The documents say nothing at all about the children of the guardians. Our heroine exclaimed that this still couldn't be true. Meanwhile, the servant told Kana that he should not go without ammunition. The guy ordered him to shut up and hand over the clothes. He can't meet the princess like this. When our heroine went out onto the balcony, the servant exclaimed that it was cool outside and she might. The woman asked why she was so pale on her wedding day. Had she really had a hard night? That very night, after a conversation with her brother, all magicians give birth to children with abilities. That's why the Riadan Empire was so demanding to give her away as a bride. They want to raise an heir with magical abilities. But guardians are different from ordinary magicians. What to do now in this situation? As soon as the emperor finds out about this, suddenly a voice was heard that announced that Emperor Riadan had let them open the gates of the capital and receive the great ruler with honors. The girl thought that it was urgent to come up with something. This alliance is short-lived and she will not be able to prevent. Last night, the brother tried to use her for his own purposes, instead of killing her like he did in his previous life. He even told her the truth about the guardians. He must consider her a necessary pawn in this game. Let it be so. Now we need to demonstrate the same thing to the emperor. It is necessary. Our heroine greeted the young man and said that it was a great honor for her to meet. When the young man sharply raised his hand to her hair, Ezebia was noticeably. The young man noted that she seemed not very happy about their engagement. When the guy said that it looked like a lie, our heroine replied that she would never lie to His Majesty. Kana asked not to call him that. The young man doesn't like all these manners, so it's better to just call him by name if it's not difficult. Ezebia asked for forgiveness and said that according to the rules, she could not allow this. Radian asked that if he called her by name, would she be able to do the same? Our heroine was shocked by such treatment and did not remember that he behaved. The young man was already tired of waiting for her to address him by name and asked if she really didn't know him. The girl replied that she knew and called him Kana. I thought to myself that this was all somehow. After some time, Ezebia was dressed in a wedding dress, and the maids simply cried at how beautiful she was. The maid said that it simply hurts her to look at this forced wedding. She deserves better and should have a nicer dress. Looking at herself in the mirror, our heroine noted that this was already quite elegant compared to what she was wearing at a wedding in a previous life. The maid rushed to hug her and shouted for the princess. But in reality, risking your life and leaving for another country is no joke. Her future husband took the girl in anticipation of an heir capable of using. Ezebia will be able to protect her people only if she makes them believe. After some time, in the name of the goddess Fahar, guardian of the looking at him, the girl thought that he still looked the same. There was not a single blemish on it. But after what she had to witness in the war, our heroine no longer felt trembling in her chest. So no matter how the young man addresses her, her heart will not beat fast. But in reality, after the kiss, everything was different. A strange warmth. Our heroine noted that this time, too, there was no wedding fuss, and it seemed that the emperor's representatives wanted to leave even faster than last time. Having touched the jewelry, which was actually a secret device, Ezebia remembered his words. The guy was glad that she decided to help him. My sister made the right choice. Her thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the emperor, who said, our heroine thought that if they didn't have children in the next few years, the guy would realize that she, without waiting for any answer from her, the young man said that he would go with her. The guy knows that it is not customary for them to have the bride and groom ride in the same carriage, but he is worried. Noticing that his wife hesitated, he told her to climb up and not force the emperor to kneel for a long time. Ezebia thought to herself that this is so strange. Now everything is completely different from the previous life. The princess did not know where this would all lead. This can be either a good sign or a bad. The young man noted that she still looked sad. Perhaps she is unwell or thinking about running. Our heroine was indignant at the ridiculous choice he gave her. From now on, she is the emperor's wife and must fulfill her. The guy exclaimed that she really thinks that kissing a man she doesn't like is her responsibility. Our heroine asked what was going on. Does he think she hates him? After thinking a little, the guy said that he had long wanted to ask her about how the emperor seemed to her. A little worried, Ezebia replied that Riadon is a real hero. Stories about him reached her ears even before the wedding. She also heard about his The young man interrupted her and said that he didn't care what they said behind his back. Involuntarily, our heroine began to remember all the emperor added that he thought so. They are already married. Looking out the window, the young man began to say that his assumptions turned out to be true, and apparently this marriage was a mistake. Ezebia thought to herself that she could not let him break the engagement. So she jumped up and exclaimed that the young man told her to return to her place because she might fall if they suddenly stopped. Literally, a second after his words, the horse was frightened of something, so it sharply reared up, thereby stopping the carriage. Of course, our heroine could not stand on her feet and began to fall, but the emperor tried to catch her. The girl found herself in the arms of the emperor, who carefully asked if she was hurt. Looking out the window at his servant, the young man asked why they stopped. The ward asked for forgiveness and said that the path was blocked by a fallen tree. His men are already. The young man noted that when they were just approaching her country, it was still standing intact. Then the emperor saw that for some reason his wife was trembling all over and clearly did not feel well. Strength is bestowed by the guardian of the silver forest. Therefore, outside of she didn't fully believe it, but now she's convinced that it's true. She feels her strength leaving her. Without magical abilities, she will absolutely not be able to stand up for herself. The spirit began to make her think that Dietrich had deliberately sent her outside the country so that she would become. The elder brother planned all this. He just wants to get rid of her and start a war. Poor Ezebia will. Our heroine began to sob, covered her ears with her hands, and shouted that enough was enough. The Cana pressed her to him and told her to try to take a big breath. Let her look around. She is safe. No one will harm her there. Some time later, the young man said that he was very sorry. He had been bothering her all day. The guy tried to get her attention because she wasn't looking in his direction at all. But no matter what our heroine thinks about him, he is not going to break off. Then the young man added that therefore he should stop looking at him with such fear in his eyes. Now Azebia understood why he was so unlike himself. In their previous life, they didn't even talk in private. After which the girl replied that she had not lied when she said that she had heard a lot about his. It was ironic that she began to study reports regarding Cana in order to better understand the enemy's weaknesses. But the more she learned about him, the more she began to doubt that this was the same emperor that Azebia knew before. The young man is a former slave who fought for freedom from the oppressive rules of the previous emperor. Then she added out loud that she was not afraid of him. The girl is quite happy with their engagement. The young man asked to be called by his name, didn't he? Suddenly, screams were heard from the wards, who reported that the pier was already visible. Our heroine thought that it could be that the future has changed. Meanwhile, the man asked the young man what he was thinking about. He replied that the wedding ended too hastily. Did the emperor really run? The ward reported that His Majesty's carriage had already left the forest and moved on. The young man exclaimed that in this case, they will soon see what the princess is like. When our heroine saw the ship, she was simply shocked by its huge size. The young man explained that a simple ship would not have survived the journey that they had to travel. The girl replied that he was too worried about her. She watches the road carefully. As soon as she said this, leaving the carriage, she immediately lost her balance and began to fall. The young man immediately grabbed her so that she wouldn't hurt herself. Then he added that you should still be more careful. The emperor hugged Azebia, took her by the arm, and asked to let him lead her. When the girl said that this was unnecessary and she could walk there herself, the young man, watching this scene from afar, exclaimed what an amazing sight. After which he introduced himself and said that his name is Oslin Vinar, who is the Minister of the Interior of the. This man is of humble origins and the son of an impoverished baron. Life taught him to judge others not by origin, but by merit. This allowed him to notice Cana, who was being an excellent strategist of the empire. He led the revolutionary movement to victory, thereby securing the position of the youth. How could our heroine forget his name, which was also mentioned in the archives? It felt like she was looking at Noticing the princess's gaze, the guy asked if he could help with anything. Azebia exclaimed that she was just thinking. Riadon said that Oslin is not only his close friend, but also the minister of the. The girl introduced herself and said that her name was Azebia Ketteril. Then she corrected herself and added that it would probably be more correct, Azebia Riadon. The young man replied that he was glad to meet you and asked if it was time for them to go to the ship. The emperor again wanted to take our heroine by the arm, but she said that she could handle it herself, Cana. The young man objected that she almost fell. Oslin silently watched this scene and waited for them to finish. Then he could not stand it, and said that it was very nice to watch how the emperor took care of the new empress. The girl immediately thought that perhaps calling the emperor by name in low classes was bad. The young man thanked him for the reminder and said that she was his wife, so she was allowed to call him. The baron objected that decency should always be maintained. The young man replied that this did not sound very good coming from someone who called him by name. The girl thought that it seemed that this was beginning to develop into a conflict. If you think about it, the guy got worried when he noticed that she wasn't feeling well, also nervous when she almost fell. Perhaps he is one of the. Therefore, she immediately shouted the emperor's name and said that she seemed to be. As soon as the young man heard about this, he immediately picked her up in his arms and muttered that he should have. After some time, the guy brought her to the cabin and said that she could rest there. Then he asked if she was sure that everything was okay with her. Her whole face turned, after which our heroine drew attention to the dress and asked if it was for her. I thought to myself that no one had given her such wonderful gifts before. Then she said that she would like to see the person who prepared this outfit for her. For some reason, after clearing his throat, the young man added that it was him. Our heroine thanked him and exclaimed that she would treat him very carefully, and he added that let him rest. There are some things waiting for him. Ezebia asked in what sense he would return. The young man reminded her that they were actually husbands. Our heroine noted to herself that she had not taken this into account at all. It turns out that today they will sleep in the same. After all, he married her for the sake of an heir, so this is inevitable. But it's too early. She thought that he would at least wait, and he will begin to perform heroic deeds, no longer wanting to delay the fulfillment of military duties. Why such a rush? Is it really so desirable for him? We need to think about it better. Even if he finds her attractive, sooner or later he will still understand that she is infertile. Suddenly, the young man took her by the chin and said that he was saying this because he was worried. Sleeping in the same bed does not mean a wedding night. Now she is not only an empress, but also a wife. Our heroine quietly replied that she would do everything to make him happy. The young man replied that he would prefer not to arrange anything on the ship at night. This means the emperor will wait for the moment when she is ready for her wedding. Ezebia asked in surprise why. The girl thought that he was waiting for an heir. Keihan noted that he was lucky to have such a devoted woman. It's their first night, and his wife, but he is in no hurry. If a girl really wants to give him an heir, then, although this is a political union, he really hopes that true love will break out between them. After some time, the emperor replayed the entire dialogue with Ezebia. Everything turned out to be somewhat more complicated, but perhaps even better. It will be easy. This way they can start their relationship with a clean slate. Oslin burst into the office and immediately shouted that he had heard that he was. The guy retorted that the population of this country was left without a guardian, so they must make up. They are better in everything that prevented them from capturing an entire. Keihan ordered him to watch his words. His wife is not a spoiled princess. For her, sweeping the papers off the table, the Baron shouted that it was simply incredible that it had even gone to his head. The young man shouted that it was still stuffy. It was just freezing in this room. What's wrong? Meanwhile, our heroine felt bad and did not understand what was happening to him. Perhaps this is due to the fact that the Guardian's powers left her. It is impossible for. The girl began to swim before her eyes, and she thought that she needed to ask the servants to bring medicine. You need to hold on. Somehow reaching the door, the girl opened it and asked if there was anyone there. There was a young man in the corridor who asked what happened to her. Did it really become bad? Ezebia immediately said that she just had a headache and that everything was fine. But suddenly the princess began to feel sick, and her stomach was very twisted. But it was strange. Suddenly she vomited right on the emperor, who was trying to keep her on her feet. The girl was horrified by what happened and did not know how to behave. The young man asked her to stop arguing and let him call the doctor. The princess began to ask for forgiveness and say that she did not want this. I thought to myself that everything didn't start out well anyway. Now she's also ruined. A ghost immediately appeared and began to tell her that she was making mistake after mistake and doing absolutely everything. The girl had already lost her magic. The only thing he needed. Ezebia once again asked for forgiveness and exclaimed that she was terribly sorry and would clean up right away. The young man replied that it was not. The young man abruptly took off his shirt and declared that the problem was. Our heroine said that she was simply afraid of upsetting him. The young man asked why. The guy is not arrogant enough to judge a person with seasickness. Ezebia asked what it was. Keihan stated that it was her first time on the ship, and he needed to create better conditions. It reminds him of his days on the battlefield. The young man found himself at a new. Then he met a man who begged him to be taken into the ranks of the revolutionaries. He was a terrible sycophant and constantly insisted that he would serve the young man until the end of his days. One day they came across the corpse of a dead soldier, and an acquaintance vomited on. It was none other than Oslin, who whined that he couldn't do this anymore. And instead of apologizing, his friend accused him that Kaon deliberately took the path with the corpses. Our heroine laughed and exclaimed that she couldn't believe it. Who would have thought that he was such a sissy? Behind this appearance, there is such a... The young man coughed and said that after a couple of years, he stopped being such a crybaby. A couple more of these trips, and today's misunderstandings will be erased from... Ezebia wondered if he also thought about his terrible... If this is so, then she is hurt by how unfair life was to him. She wished she could... After some time, there was a knock on the door, and the young man stated that he... The girl asked in surprise that they were really waiting for someone. When Kaon exclaimed what he was waiting for and let him go do his job, the guy asked for forgiveness and replied that the young man said that enough excuses because the Empress needs him. The doctor replied that it was a great honor for him. Then the boy introduced himself and said that Ezebia could not believe her eyes that he was the doctor of the Riadan Empire. Paying attention to her strange, intent gaze, the young man felt uneasy. The girl realized that she was apparently staring at him too much, so she said hello. Kahan hissed that while the guy was chilling somewhere, the Empress was suffering. Let her explain what's bothering her. Our heroine said that she is already much better, so don't let him put so much pressure on him. The young man objected that carelessness entails bad. Then he exclaimed, "What is he waiting for? Let him finally start." Ezebia noted to herself that he was trembling all over, which means he was very afraid. The young man replied that he would soon turn 18 years old. Ezebia exclaimed that he is so young. Our heroine objected that she did not believe in this. The emperor would not trust an inexperienced person. Riadan said that he thinks quickly. A young man only needs to watch it once to remember something. He made him a doctor in the hope that one day not everyone is able to memorize the entire human structure at such a young age. Ezebia turned to the doctor and said that after all, the emperor liked him, so there was no need to worry. Stuttering Simon replied that they flattered him. The young man did not have any special talents at all. The girl thanked him and said that it was nice to know that their health was not in danger when he was nearby. The young man clearly did not like all these favors between his wife and the doctor. After some time, Kahan said that the doctor is a timid guy. When Ezebia replied that it was good, the guy asked why. The girl explained that she knew that it would be necessary to get to know. Our heroine thought to herself that he seemed upset about something. This is not surprising, since the guy apparently The girl asked for forgiveness for her behavior. The young man exclaimed. The princess explained that the doctor simply reminded her of her younger brother, and regarding the fact that she took his hand, Ezebia remembered how he hugged her in the carriage. Then Kahan, but still, in the future, she will try to monitor her actions more. Suddenly, the guy put some kind of candy in her mouth and said that it should kill the bitter aftertaste of the medicine. When the girl realized that these were candied raspberries, she exclaimed that this was her favorite delicacy. The young man said that she could eat it as much as she liked, since he had a lot of it. He noticed that Ezebia still had not eaten the berry he gave her. The girl is like a rabbit timidly biting a lettuce leaf. Simon's medicine will work soon. Just a little more and she will feel better. It's actually late and time to go to bed. When the princess asked, "What about him?" the young man replied that he still needed to look at some documents. He brought all the papers into the bedroom because he could not leave his wife alone until he was sure that she was in perfect order. Let her rest, and he will look after her. After some time, our heroine noted that he wasn't joking and really hadn't gone anywhere. The young man does not pay attention to her bad manners, nor does he care about her health. I wonder if he really wants to love her like a real wife. If this marriage union can bring peace to her state, then perhaps Ezebia. But suddenly, she remembered her brother's words that she might not even. The girl forgot for a moment that she could not give the emperor an heir. He will get rid of her. The generosity and kindness of a young man will be transformed into real cruelty. Therefore, there is no need to get too carried away. She is here to protect RK and not to build a happy family life. Perhaps it's worth letting him know that it was all for fun. Waking up the next morning, the princess saw that the young man was not there, which means he had gone somewhere. After a while, the maid worriedly asked if she was sure that she wanted to go out already. Maybe she should rest a little more. The girl asked her not to worry and said that after sleep she felt much better. Plus, this is her first trip on a ship, so it would be a pity to sleep all day in the cabin. Suddenly, our heroine felt splashes of water begin to fall on her face. The princess had a view of the endless blue sea, which was simply magical. The girl saw him for the first time, so she was simply speechless from such beauty. Several servants immediately greeted the empress, and she responded by thanking them for their good work. Aslan had the same expression on his face last night. They are all afraid of her. Every single one. No wonder. For them, Ezebia is just some kind of stranger. Riadan is a very young empire. Cana does not need the magic of RK, but a wife from noble circles who could help gain support and acquaintances. But instead of responding to the expectations of those close to him, the young man decided to marry a foreign princess from a collapsing kingdom. Consequently, they are all afraid of her. One might even say they hate it. Ezebia has not encountered anything like this before, since in RK, magicians are treated with respect. Now, she's even scared to think what the Riadan Empire has in store for her. Suddenly, there was a cry from Simon, who was rushing at full speed towards our heroine and squealing that he had already searched her everywhere. Ezebia said that if he is worried about yesterday, then everything is already in order. His medications worked. The young man replied that it was cool outside, and if she stayed on the deck for a long time, she would catch a cold. Suddenly, behind him, the voice of the emperor was heard, who said that he had no doubt that the carelessness of the court physician would not pass his eyes. Then Cana picked her up and said that his wife was not there when he returned to the cabin, so now they will go back. The ship is rocking hard, and he doesn't want her to get sick again. The girl noted that his servants would not like such actions towards her. The young man asked if manners were important at the moment. Our heroine replied that he is the main role model for the nobility. Picking up and carrying away a woman in your arms is not nice. The guy leaned over to her and said that there was something he should have told earlier. It was for this reason that he sought to take the throne. The young man wanted to change everything. He dreamed of building a country in which people would feel free and would not be constrained by the chains of etiquette and hierarchy. You shouldn't worry about the opinion of those close to you. The servants accept the emperor as he is, and those who dared to look down on him are no longer around. When Ezebia found books on the bed, Cana said that he brought a couple especially for her, since there was absolutely nothing to do in the cabin. The girl was surprised that there were even publications on the ship. The guy explained that on long journeys, you can't go anywhere without them. They were brought from the shelves of the Imperial Library. Ezebia exclaimed that she loved to read. Lately, there hasn't been a single free minute, and she hasn't been able to devote any time to books. Our heroine leafed through the book and thought that even excerpts from these books are difficult to find in RK, but here they are in such good condition. She also heard that the Imperial Library is the largest on the entire continent. Apparently, Kana also loves to read. The more she gets to know him, the more surprised she is. The girl thought that all this did not interest him too much, since he literally grew up on the battlefield. Reading was her only hobby, even in her past life. She spent most of her time alone, but books helped her cope with this. Thanks to the hero's experiences, Ezebia forgot about her own for a while. But now she had a strange feeling. It was very unusual to share something that is dear to someone. Then I thought that if only they could live so peacefully in the Empire, after which she fell asleep. After some time, the young man woke her up and informed her that the ship had already arrived at the port. Very soon, they will step on the threshold of the palace. Ezebia asked why he did not greet his people after returning, whether there would be any problems. The guy returned with a marriage union. In her country, people would wait in trepidation. The young man replied that in a few days he would give a welcoming speech, and it would be enough for her to just be nearby. Officially, he wants to introduce her after the grandiose wedding that they will hold in the Empire, since the one that was in Arche is a pure formality. Such a ceremony will secure the position of the princess as the consort of the emperor. After a while, the headmaid Mariana greeted the princess and said that they would do everything to make her comfortable. A woman would like to show her the palace so that the girl can navigate normally. Ezebia noted that the entire palace is evidence of the wealth and prosperity of the empire. It's no surprise that Arche failed in its previous life. They underestimated Cana and studied the enemy too poorly. Then the girl noted that one of the buildings looked different. Mariana explained that this estate is a palace annex. Our heroine thought to herself that this was somehow strange, since this building is very similar to her palace in Arche. When asked if she would like to examine him, the princess replied that perhaps later. For now, she would prefer to finish her walk. The woman replied that, in this case, she would show her the chambers that had been prepared especially for the empress. Our heroine, looking around the luxurious bedroom, exclaimed that this was too much for her. The maid added that she had prepared a hot bath for her, because there is nothing better than bathing after a long journey. She will also check with the servants whether everything is ready for tonight. His Majesty and the princess will spend their first night in the palace. The young man noted that the room seemed to have changed somewhat during his absence. Our heroine noted that all the servants, including Mariana, worked hard to make this night unforgettable. Having heard the word unforgettable, the guy said that he now understood why she was wearing a shirt. Our heroine blushed all over and asked that he really thought it was too much. Cana said that it suits her very well. He promised that he wouldn't make the first move until she was ready, but when he sees her like this, it's very difficult to restrain himself. Then he said that he should forget about it. She's probably very tired, so it's time for them to go to bed. Ezebia asked for forgiveness and said that she did not really understand all these issues. The young man said that there was no need to apologize, since he was the same. He had never had intimacy before. When the girl asked in surprise if it was true, Cana responded by asking why she was so amazed by this. Ezebia said that, after all, he is an emperor, and rulers should take care of procreation. The young man looked at her carefully and asked if she was disappointed because she wanted an experienced man. He can't just go and learn, so it's hard to do anything about it. Our heroine exclaimed that this was not what she meant. It's just all somehow unexpected. The emperor stated that the problem had not gone away. They both don't know what to do about it. Therefore, I suggested that we practice a little. Just lie next to her and then see how it goes. The girl asked to wait a minute, because she was not entirely comfortable in this shirt, and she wanted to change. The young man stopped her and said that there were buttons on the back, so he wanted to help her, if she didn't mind. Having unbuttoned the dress, the guy said that's it and she can go change. The girl thanked him. Already lying in bed, Ezebia thought that it was very awkward, since usually the maids helped her. But today he. Then came the voice of Cana, who asked if she had changed her mind about training, since if she lay so far away, he would not be able to hold her hand. The girl asked if he wasn't embarrassed, because they were now in the same bed and this one so suddenly. When the couple sailed on the ship, he slept in another room. The young man replied that she was wrong. Our heroine was sleeping on the bed, and he was on the chair next to her. He went to another room only when it was necessary to change clothes or take a bath. When our heroine asked why, the guy replied that she had nightmares and cried in her sleep, so he didn't want to leave her alone. The young man promised her that he would be there until she could sleep peacefully. The girl whispered that he was really not what she imagined him to be. Then she honestly admitted that she was afraid of him before the wedding. I believed the rumors, and they portrayed him as a tyrant and a cruel revolutionary. But in reality, everything turned out to be completely different. She's just worried that he doesn't like her. The young man stroked her cheek and said that he liked Ezebia very much, and he did not regret marrying her one bit. Now and in the future, he only needs her. Our heroine whispered that this was happiness, since she also really liked the young man. I thought to myself that I need to try not to lose my head, since the Emperor really only needs her abilities. He doesn't like the girl herself as a person, but the fact that she is a keeper. The next day, our heroine found roses near her bed and wondered who brought them. Perhaps the maid. Mariana approached her and asked how her first night in the imperial palace was. The girl replied that fragrant herbs helped her fall asleep quickly, so she felt very cheerful. The maid said that she was very happy and asked if she had any wishes. Our heroine noted to herself that she was too polite, and it was clear that the maid was very afraid of her. But there was no time to think and worry about that, since she had a lot to do in the empire. Azebia asked if Mariana could prepare her a simple breakfast, since after it she wanted to go somewhere, namely to the Imperial Library. Once there, our heroine noted that there were more books there than anywhere else. The servant added that this place also contains books that were not officially published. There are even collections of legends and tales that were previously passed on only by word of mouth. The girl was taken aback by the information she heard. Then she asked that maybe there are tales about wizards in the library. The young man replied that all books about magic are in the secret section. However, she can visit him at any time. The princess immediately asked if she could go there right away. Azebia thought that the rarest books were kept in the secret department. Therefore, there might be a key to the guardian's powers. Her attention was drawn to a green publication that stood out from all the others. Perhaps this is exactly it. The heyday of magic was hundreds of years ago, so she understood that finding it would not be so easy, but she could not even think that she would immediately stumble upon it. There were rumors that representatives of some races still practice magic. This is why you can find more information about guardians than about ordinary wizards. The girl began to read that more than 3,000 years ago, an army of evil invaded where people lived. They even threatened the deity and her silver forest. It was then that a man from the Ketteril clan heard the call of the forest and came to the rescue, after which he vowed to protect him until the end of his days. Her devotion and courage impressed the goddess Fohar, so she endowed her family with divine power. However, the fragile human body was unable to withstand the power of the gods. Therefore, the keeper of the Silver Forest will never be able to live an ordinary life. Our heroine noted that she already knew all this. Just one person who completely devoted himself to serving God and protecting the forest became an exception. Eternal friend of the forest elves, Janessa Ketteril. Having bypassed all human limitations, her child received a blessing from the forest elves, who, after all these years, still continue to miss her. Azebia remembered that in history books, they only wrote about her that she was a guardian who awakened several thousand years ago. It was interesting how she was able to give birth to a child. Perhaps our heroine can find out more about her if she meets the forest elves, but where to look for them? Suddenly, a young man appeared at the door and asked why she was still sitting in the library. The ladies-in-waiting are very upset that the Empress disappears from morning to evening and does not show herself to anyone. The girl asked for forgiveness and said that while reading, she simply did not notice how time flew by. The young man said that he is not angry that she spends so much time in the library. He's just worried that his wife forgets to take care of her health, being so weak. The guy expected something like this to happen at least once. After all, because she loves to read so much, he had to take this into account. Then the young man opened the doors to some room and told her to look in there. Kana thought that he should show her this place in order to confirm the sincerity of his concern. Azebia admired how beautiful it was around and noted that he even planted flowers there. The emperor asked if she really liked flowers that much. The girl answered yes. Especially with small buds, it comes in different colors. Ryodan said that he is very glad that she likes everything, but when she goes out like this to enjoy any things, she should not forget to take something to eat with her. The guy ordered that even more flowers be planted for her around the special palace. It would be nice to take a walk there someday. It was built quite recently and stands alone. Our heroine thought to herself that he really built it especially for her, and this beautiful garden too. Azebia does not want to be so mistaken, But why does he care about her so tenderly? Touching one of the flowers, the girl noted that it was somehow strange why she felt a tremor of magic from it. The emperor asked why she was silent, if something had happened. The princess replied that everything was fine. This flower is just too beautiful. I thought to myself that after leaving RK, she would no longer be able to use magic. Could she really use her abilities here to communicate with plants? While Kana is not looking, you can try to talk to the flower in order to check this. But suddenly, a voice was heard in her head that said that it was impossible. Why did she even come to this place? She needs to get out of there as soon as possible. The young man worriedly asked what happened to the princess and if everything was okay. She looked at him in confusion and did not understand what was happening. The voices continued to say that if she did not leave, she would die. A week later, the girl in the garden told the young man that no matter how much he asked her, her answer remained the same. The young man asked why she answered so rudely. "You need to be a little kinder." The stranger shouted indignantly that she had always been proud of her profession. The guy replied that pride is good, but is it more important than its own sister? Clenching her fists, the woman asked how he knew about it. The young man told her to weigh everything well and think it over, because fulfilling his request is not so difficult. Let him simply report on everything the empress does and talks about, that's all. Moreover, she will continue to work in the palace. Since she finally returned there, doesn't this mean that his proposal interested her? The guy is sure that they can get along better than she thinks. Then he turned to Mariana and asked to clarify what her response to his request would be. After some time, the girl came to her sister, who was lying in bed. Then she sat down next to her and asked for forgiveness, because she promised to visit her more often, but never did, because there was a lot of business in the palace. But first, let Edith take the medicine. Looking at her sister, Marian felt pain from how bad she felt. The maid remembered how the man told her that her sister was sick with sclerosis. The only younger sister suffers from such a disgusting, incurable disease. The guy knows very well what kind of illness this is, which can be considered a curse in their empire. If you do not take potions that contain magical components, then the whole body will turn to stone and the person will die. And in a world where wizards are hard to find, the prices for such medicines have skyrocketed. Such an incurable disease apparently causes too much inconvenience. By collaborating with them, she will also be able to touch big money. The guys can give her as much money as the girl can't even imagine. Mariana asked who he meant by the word they, besides himself. The stranger replied that he could tell about this only if she agreed to his proposal. Let him think it over carefully. The maid was sobbing at her sister's bed and thinking about why he asked her for this, what he needed from her. Meanwhile, Aslan handed over to His Majesty the tax calculations for the western part of the empire, as he had requested. The guy also made several proposals for reform of the tax system. Therefore, if it is not difficult for him, then let him familiarize himself with them. The emperor thanked him for the work done. Then he added that at this rate, the reform proposals would be ready for the next council meeting. The Baron replied that this time the discussion at the meeting would be more serious. Conservative-minded aristocrats will not allow tax reform to be carried out. They will in any way advocate for the preservation of old customs. If they reject the reform plan, then they will also disrupt the verification of the primary documentation. They still believe that aristocrats should rule the people. That is, they still adhere to the old beliefs. The emperor added that they too allowed someone like him to take the throne, although this was not permission, but complete surrender. Since they had to surrender shamefully at that moment, you can expect a dirty trick from them, because they can betray you at any moment. We must not forget how they are actually configured. If their means had not helped to support the empire, they would have shared the fate of the past emperor, beheaded by his sword. And in general, the young man simply does not want to shed someone's blood once again, at least within the empire. Then I thought that if Azebia knew what he had been through, she would say that she liked him and consider him a hero. After some time, Marian came to the greenhouse and asked the Empress if she was looking for her. Our heroine answered yes. There was something she wanted to ask her. This conversation will be too long to stand, so you need to sit down. On the way, the girl said that this winter garden is simply incredible, and the maid cannot even imagine how surprised she was when she first saw it. Ezebia thought to herself that she was really surprised, but did not expect that she would still be able to communicate with plants despite the fact that her power was gone away from home. On that very day, the flowers told her that the woman close to her was dangerous. She constantly meets some strange people in this garden. She even discussed with one of them how to harm the princess. The empress asked them for permission to look into their memories and find out what exactly they were talking about. The plants said that she could do this as much as she wanted, since they were on her side. After this, our heroine independently became convinced of what was really happening. Ezebia asked the maid if she liked flowers. The woman replied that they were beautiful, so most likely yes. But much more than any plants, she loves her little sister. The princess asked how old she was, and the maid answered that she was 10 years younger than her. Their parents died early, so she raised her herself. Since Marion became her maid, the sister lives alone outside the palace. The girl stated that it must be very difficult. The woman said that the youngest could also work as a maid and move to the palace, but unfortunately, she has very serious health problems. Ezebia asked what exactly was wrong with her. The girl replied that she had been sick with sclerosis for a long time, and Marion was trying to get medicine for her. Then she came to her senses, asked for forgiveness, and said that she should not have stood and complained to Her Majesty. Our heroine exclaimed that everything was fine because she was the first to suggest talking. After all, they intersect every day, and Ezebia didn't even try to meet and get to know her better.